I often get questions about, but save those questions, because really the point of this, I want it to be useful for you. So anything you'd like to ask when we get to that point, I'm more than open to. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. Let's see, you guys, and Anton, you tell me, is this, you can see it okay?
That looks perfect.
Okay, and you just yell if I did it wrong, and you can see my notes here.
Okay, all right, you're good.
Let's see here. Okay, look good? Thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
Okay, so just to give you a little overview, I'm going to kind of talk about why is sleep important? How is it connected to all these different things? Sleep problems. When do you know it's a problem, right? Everybody has a bad night now and then, but when do you know, hey, this is a sign I should try to talk to somebody, get a sleep assessment, let me see what's going on. I'm going to talk about some common things we know happen with age that you might have already noticed. And then I like to go over strategies, lots of different strategies, not only the ones I talk about, but ones we see advertised, which ones work, which ones don't work, and try to help people sort through all that advice. Okay, so starting off, physically, sleep is really important. Even, if you have chronic sleep problems, now this isn't somebody who has one bad night's sleep, but let's say you have chronic insomnia, your sleep is disrupted, you have sleep apnea. If you're not, if we look at that, it does affect how your body functions. It's related to mortality. It's related to obesity. The hormones leptin and ghrelin, those are the hormones that tell us, hey, you're hungry, or hey, you're full. We find that when we study that in someone who hasn't slept for a couple weeks, well, they're screwed up, and they do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. They say, no, you're hungry, when you're not really hungry, and they don't let you know when your stomach's full. So then people end up, if we take somebody in a lab and we say, oh, I see someone might need to mute. Thank you. And we have somebody in the lab, even a 20-year-old, and we say, we keep them from sleeping all night. And then we just see what they do the next day. They eat about 100, 150 calories more than they normally would if they're not sleeping well, because it's pretty quick to throw that off. But, other things like if you have diabetes, cardiovascular illness, cortisol, cholesterol levels, if you already have those conditions, certainly not sleeping well doesn't help them. And then we do know too that it actually affects our immune system. I think one of my favorite studies, just because it really shows how important it is, if we look at folks who maybe haven't slept well for a week and then they get the flu shot, your body generates, thank you. Your body generates 50% fewer antibodies from that flu shot than if you slept great the week before you got it. So it affects how our immune system incorporates flu shots, vaccines, and of course, we know that's a big topic of today. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what we discover over time. But I think it just reinforces for me that healthy sleep really does create a healthy body. Now, insomnia, what is insomnia? So a lot of people throw that word around, and sometimes you really don't have a diagnosable insomnia. About 10% of the population will have it at some point. But I will say, as we get older, more people complain of sleep problems. So insomnia technically here is difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep. So you're awake a lot in the middle of the night. Maybe you wake up earlier than you want to. You wake up feeling not as refreshed as you usually do. And you notice this problem 3 or more days a week. Now, sometimes what I like to add into this is, okay, but what's normal sleep? So how do we know when it's not normal? Normal is, you sleep between 6 and 9 hours every night, or let's say you're a napper, and I'm pro nap. Okay, so if you nap, we look at the whole 24-hour day. Are you sleeping somewhere between 6 and 9 hours? That's normal. 1 to 2 nights a week, you might have trouble sleeping. Maybe it takes you 15 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. Maybe you wake up, you use the restroom, or you just wake up, but then you fall back to sleep. All that's kind of normal. That's normal business. When I start to notice that people are starting to snore and they didn't snore before, maybe you're falling asleep during the day when you don't want to fall asleep, you're doing something or you're watching something, or you're sleeping more than you used to. So consistently every night, some people come in and say, gosh, I'm in bed and I'm sleeping 9 to 10 hours a night. Then I kind of wonder, is your body fighting something off? What's going on? Sometimes sleep is the first sign of something going on with you health-wise. So I work with a lot of primary care docs, and they'll say, hey, when someone comes in and says I have trouble sleeping, I always like to do a thorough check to see what's going on underneath that, especially if it's new. So when do you know? So if you're having trouble 3 or more days a week, that's a good sign that it'd be good to talk to somebody about it. Maybe start with your primary care. If you're noticing snoring, get an overnight sleep study. It's always better to have more information, and to see, and then maybe they're behavioral specialists. I always like to say, try all the things you can do before you start medication, because a lot of times people start people right on medication. And I'll talk about what that does to your body a little bit here in a bit. Okay, shifting to what changes as we get older. So our sleep is slightly shorter. Now, sometimes I hear people say, oh, you need more sleep or you need less sleep as you get older. I don't know that I describe it either direction. I'd say, so if you sleep 7.5 hours when you're 40, you might sleep 7 when you're 70. It's not a huge change. It might be 30, 40 minutes. But, if you normally sleep 8 hours and suddenly you're sleeping 5.5 every night, then we want to look at that. What's going on? That's a bigger change. You wake up more during the night. And part of the reason for this is, is your sleep we get less deep sleep as we get older. And I'm going to talk about this a lot because deep sleep is important, and there is just biologically as we get older, when we're young, as in 20, 30, about 20% of our sleep is deep sleep. And then as we're over 65, it's about 5%. That's normal. And here, I'll give you another, graph here. You can kind of see that. How does it change with age? That slow wave sleep, that green bar in the middle, if you can see it, it does get less with age. So, and I think that that's normal. So, if you can prioritize your sleep and protect your sleep, because you want to get every little bit of that you can. I will say, often we have to go to the bathroom more. We can spend, I notice that people often report that whether it's pain, light in the room, you're spending more time in bed. The more time you spend in bed, the more time you're going to spend awake, because we can't force ourselves to sleep longer. So you just notice some of these changes with age. And I will say there's actually some researchers, not me, but other folks that are smarter than me, are working on ways to actually do something, whether it's a light, whether it's a machine, but something to help us even get more deep sleep. And so we will always keep our eye on that. Okay, shifting to sleep hygiene strategies. Now, I always like to say, this is the stuff you read in magazines. This is the stuff that if we're just looking at sort of news and stories that sort of make headlines, I feel like these are the things that people say, I've tried all this, my sleep still isn't better. And I call them necessary but not sufficient. So all of these things have the power to wreck your sleep. But sometimes if you have an underlying sleep disorder, fixing all of these things might not improve things. So they're worth paying attention to make sure that you have them in check. But sometimes they're not enough, but I think they're worth talking about. So for example, Soul Steppers is a great organization that I love, because anybody who encourages regular exercise that works for you and your body and schedule is helpful. Making sure your room is free from light. We can talk in a little bit here about, does TV interfere or help? I've had a lot of people say TV helps me fall asleep. Well, TV actually, kind of acts as white noise. It gives us less blue light than our phones or these tablets. So I'd rather someone have a TV on than have a phone or a tablet right up by their face. Familiar sounds sometimes help soothe people. And so in those ways, like having a TV on as you fall asleep is positive. But there's a flip side. The flip side is Sometimes it stimulates your brain, depending on what's on TV. There is a little bit of light, and light suppresses melatonin. So it makes it harder to kind of stay asleep. So, and it keeps you in a lighter stage of sleep. So you don't get into deep sleep quite as much. So there's pros and cons. And, I tell people, hey, if you're one of those folks that loves to fall asleep with the TV on, hook up a timer. They can actually set timers now so that, let's say, your TV will turn off after 45 minutes or whatever length of time you think you need. And then you kind of get the best of both worlds. Other things like anything you can keep regular in your schedule, when you go to bed, when you get up, when you eat meals. Regularity really helps solidify our circadian rhythm. It kind of gives us this like anchor in our day. And so I think we all notice when some emergency happens or something throws off our schedule, that can mess with our sleep. So anything you can keep on a schedule actually is helpful. Caffeine can certainly affect us differently as we get older. So, especially coffee and things like that, if you can keep it in the morning. If you do have trouble needing to use the restroom a lot overnight, cutting off liquids at a certain time can help. Alcohol is always something I like to mention because I think there's this myth, the nightcap helps you fall asleep. Well, and actually it does help you fall asleep. The problem is when we metabolize alcohol, it activates our brain. When we metabolize it, it will wake you up in the middle of the night. So, if maybe some night, if you are an alcohol drinker, maybe you have one more or two more than you usually do, you might have had that experience where you wake up in the middle of the night and you're kind of tired and wired. It's like you really are exhausted, but you can't sleep. And that's the extreme version of what alcohol does. Even if you just have, a drink, it still can disrupt your sleep a little bit, even if you're not fully aware of it. So, I know for some people that's a part of their joy, and I think everyone's got to figure out what it is for them. If you are someone who really enjoys that glass of wine with dinner, try to do it early. If you go to bed at 10, try to do it at 5. Keep it, don't fall into the nightcap. Because that's not a real thing, unfortunately. Smoking, certainly, which I'm really happy to see a lot less people smoke. So that certainly, just the nicotine and the craving for it will wake you up. And then keeping your bedroom a comfortable temperature. Now, I often, when I work with people, they'll say, hey, I need to take a warm bath and, get in really like my flannels. And as soon as I'm warm, I fall asleep. But what I'll tell you is actually, this is a graph of our core body temperature. And what you'll notice is it drops in the middle of the night and it gets to its lowest point around maybe 4, if you're an 11 to 7 sleeper. So depending on when your sleep schedule is, it'll be in the middle of the night. And then it starts to go back up naturally. And that's actually what wakes us up. So some of you might notice sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you're warm. Right? You feel warm, and it's partly because your core body temperature on its own is going up, and that starts to wake us up. So even though sometimes it's nice to feel cozy, I will say if you can actually even take a bath, but wear something, especially with the heat waves in the summer, wear something cool to bed, keep your room a cool temperature if you have control of the temperature, that really they say 66, 67 degrees is perfect for most people's bodies. Now, I know that sounds cold, but I just will encourage you to say, try to not have the heater on too high, because heat really makes it actually hard to fall asleep. Something to try. Okay. Then I like to talk about behaviors. These I call the heavy hitters, because I think these are the things that if someone comes to me and they say, can you tell me just one thing I can do to improve my sleep? If I only have a shot at telling them one thing, and you can already tell, I'd like to tell them 20 things because I love to talk about it. But if I can only pick one, I'm going to say get up at the same time every day. Why? Because that's the only thing we can control. We can set an alarm. We can wake up. A lot of times people say, hey, I wake up about the same time. Maybe you set an alarm to be sure. We can force ourselves to wake up. We can't force ourselves to sleep. So I like to pick something that we have absolute control of. And so, if you get into bed when you're sleepy. Some people say, hey, it's 11, I got to go to bed. But sometimes you're not sleepy at 11. Sometimes or if your bedtime's 9, you get in and you're thinking about the day and your mind's kind of, the hamster wheel's going. It's hard to fall asleep. Sometimes maybe it's better to stay up until 10 and then you're really sleepy. But but still, no matter what time you go to bed, get up at the same time. A lot of times I hear people say, hey, if I have trouble sleeping, I stay in bed so I can get that sleep in the morning. The problem with that is it's kind of like traveling across the country. If you get up 2 hours later one day, 3 hours later than you normally would, you give yourself jet lag. It's kind of socially, self-induced jet lag, and you're not going to feel that good, and it's going to throw off your sleep for the next night. So the more you can keep things on schedule, the better. Go to bed when you're sleepy. I talked about a lot of these things. Naps, I personally love naps. So, some will say, hey, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, don't nap. But maybe you really relish in a nap. When I get the chance, love it. The key here is, I'll tell you, there is an ideal time is 7 to 9 hours after you wake up. So for a lot of us, that might be 2, 3, 4 o'clock, somewhere in the afternoon. And that actually coincides with a time that we naturally feel a little sleepy. And so the key, though, is just keeping your nap to, I often tell people, hey, set a soft alarm. It doesn't have to be too annoyed. Set an alarm for, 45 minutes or half an hour, because it'll take you a little while maybe to fall asleep. Maybe you just lie there and rest. Sometimes that's what your body needs. So if you're a napper, just keep it short. Because what we find is let's say you nap for 2 hours, then you start going through the sleep cycles and you wake up in a deeper stage of sleep. Those naps when you wake up and you feel worse than when you laid down. That's because you're waking up during a different stage of sleep. You really got into a deep stage of sleep. You don't want to do that if you feel terrible. So if you keep it short, you just do the light sleep. That is what's most refreshing. So I promise if you try it, you might notice that, because sometimes, you think, oh, that's not going to be enough, but sometimes it's just enough to give you kind of a second wind. Buffer zone, I always like to mention that because a lot of people are on screens now and doing active things at night. And so I say, that hour before you get into bed, if you can avoid screens, or if they are screens, make them TVs, anything further away from your eyes, then there's less light going into your eyes, so you can just build up that melatonin. If you're awake a lot in the middle of the night and that you're not, when you wake up and you say, I'm not going to fall back to sleep, that's when we start staring at the clock and saying, oh gosh, I got to be up in 4 hours. Oh, I got to be up in 3.5 hours. Oh, what am I going to do? As soon as you're doing math in the middle of the night, that's when you gotta either turn the clock around or get out of bed and do something relaxing until you feel sleepy again. I know sometimes that's hard, and I tell people, if that happens to you a lot, put a comfortable chair next to your bed, or get a nice blanket in a comfortable place in the next room, so that you have a place to go to that's welcoming for you, and do something relaxing, reading a magazine, something that won't get you too interested in. Sometimes people say, oh, I clean stuff, or I start doing stuff around the house in the middle of the night. We don't want to give insomnia a function. So if you start being productive, then you kind of set the stage to kind of wake up every night at that time, because it starts to become a habit. So I say, do something really relaxing and brief if you can. And then as you're sleeping, notice how much time am I actually asleep? Maybe when you really look at it, you think, oh, it took me an hour to fall asleep. I'm probably asleep for 6 hours and then I wake up. So you want to be in bed closer to the amount of time you're sleeping. And I'll show you that here on the next graph. So sometimes when people come to see me, they're in this top bar. So the green is you're awake and the blue is you're asleep. So you notice the person's awake, asleep, awake, asleep. And it's kind of like pizza dough. When you get a ball of pizza dough and you start spreading it out and you get some holes. And if you keep spreading it, you're going to get more holes. So if you think about it like that, if you just stay in bed longer, you're going to have more periods of being awake. So sometimes what we got to do is kind of squish that dough back together. Maybe we're in bed a little bit less, but it will also squeeze out those periods of being awake. And once our sleep is more what we call consolidated or solid, then that's a good time. You could maybe expand a little bit. That's often what I work with people on, is the schedule and how to really decrease the amount of time that you're awake. Okay. Now, when we think of what I do in the sort of formal term, CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. But you know what? There's lots of different little parts of that. Some of it's relaxation. Some of it's the behavior stuff I just talked about. Some of it's, you know, if maybe somebody just had a surgery, so they're always in their bed. If you're in the same place all day long, we got to figure out how to change it so that you can associate, you know, that relaxing, you can associate being asleep with being in your bed. You know, some people eat, work, talk on the phone, do everything in bed, but then it becomes an active place for you. So some of that's what we do. But we call it CBTI. And I will say, when we do studies of people where we give them sleeping medications or we do some of these other strategies, that they're pretty equally effective. But if you're doing sleep medication and you take the medication away, the problems often come back. So that's why I really love what I do, because if I can find ways for you to improve your sleep, improve your health that you have control of, then you know what to do if it happens again in the future. You sort of have control over that. Whereas medications, you know, they can interact like side effects. You have drug interactions. They're expensive. So sometimes we do need something, but I think it's worth trying some of these other strategies first. Now there's some over-the-counter stuff that folks may have tried, and none of these, sometimes, you know, people find they're helpful, sometimes they don't, but I always like to mention them because I think there's a little evidence for each of them that they're helpful. Chamomile tea, you know, anything that helps you relax and sort of that buffer zone time. Valerian root, some people, you know, find that helps kind of solidify their sleep. Melatonin. The thing I like to say with melatonin, it's a very commonly used one. Buy a high quality melatonin, because when they study melatonin, because all these aren't federally regulated, sometimes it'll say, hey, this is 3 milligrams of melatonin. And then when we really analyze the substance, sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. So buy a high quality one. I will say 3 to 5 milligrams is a very typical dose that people try. I will say taking 20 doesn't do anything more for you. So more is not more, if that makes sense in general. And don't take it. It's one of those things. Don't take it right when you're getting into bed. It builds up a little bit in your body. So take it an hour before, give it a chance to work. We secrete our own melatonin. And the good news is, even if you take melatonin, you're not impairing that natural system you have. As we get older, what we notice is people release melatonin earlier. And so that's why some of you may be noticing, hey, I'm a little sleepy at like 7, and that's not when I go to bed. Some of this might be when your melatonin changing, but you know, you can always you know, work on the timing of that, or maybe you go for a walk late afternoon and expose yourself to light, and that might help push that melatonin a little later. Magnesium, sometimes people find this is, you know, we do have some evidence that it helps kind of relaxation of your muscles. So making sure, you know, trying this is a real easy thing to try that doesn't have a lot of side effects. I do always like to mention CBD, you know, certainly in California and certain states, it's legal. And we don't, here's the hard part. The hard part is that we don't have a lot of research on it. So we don't know how it interacts with other medications you might be on. You know, they certainly don't have exact dosages or types that they recommend. If you go into a dispensary, they might recommend things, but we don't know. So I will say, you know, in our clinic, we don't recommend it because we just don't know. We don't have evidence for or against, and we don't know. We don't have enough information, but we do ask everybody. And I'll tell you, probably half the people I ask have tried it, whether it's a gummy here for anxiety, sleep, pain. A lot of people are using it. And so my hope, honestly, is that we start doing more research on it. We start talking about it more so that if people are trying it, we can give some recommendations around it. But I like to mention it because I certainly do have people that report it helps, but I like to always put a little caution tag on it as well. All right, the magic wand. Okay, any one of us have walked into Walgreens, CVS, any drugstore, and in fact, for this slide, I thought, oh, I'll go into a drugstore and take a picture of just that shelf that has things that help with your sleep. And every time I think of that, I realize, oh, it's not one shelf, it's like 10 shelves. There are a million things. It's a big business. And so that always makes me wary. And I will say that often these different things, even if you take one and they help for that night, and then you think, oh, that's the thing that's going to do it for me. And then after a week, it stops working. So, I think, there's no magic wand. And sometimes when we just reach for, a pill to do something, we don't really address what's going on underneath it. So maybe there's some other things that we need to pay attention to. I think that, a new pillow, a new mattress, those kinds of things, I think it can't hurt to switch those up. The one caution I will make with buying things over the counter is, especially as we get older, anything like antihistamines, allergy pills. Some people say, hey, I take a half a Benadryl. Is that good? As we get older, those are the big caution. No. They're anticholinergic. And because they have this anticholinergic, when they have that antihistamine function, they actually can affect our thinking a little bit. So if you think of the drugs we use for people with early cognitive impairment, the cholinesterase inhibitors, it's that same system. And, I think that, people can start to feel foggy or like they can't think straight. So we just know those drugs and, are really a no-no. I think there's other things if you have to take something that are, more worth trying. Okay, some other tools here that I've had people talk about that I think can be useful. If you're somebody who suffers from anxiety, insomnia, if you know someone who's autistic, they have studies that weighted blankets actually are helpful. So it's worth trying if your problem is kind of an active nervous system, you kind of really need some physical calming. Weighted blankets, some people do journaling for that. There's different ways to do journaling depending on what it makes sense for you. If your problem is more environmental, so maybe there's noise, maybe there's light, if you're in the hospital, or if you have a street light that shines in your, if you can't get blackout curtains, or there's, other light, maybe your partner sleeps with the TV, then masks, or having white noise to sort of, any sort of white, pink noise, nature sounds. There's lots of machines nowadays. Some people I see love calm. There's apps out there that will kind of do relaxing sort of guided imagery scripts, and there's sleep stories and different things. And some people really love that. I even have one patient I see that he says, I wake up in the middle of the night and I have Alexa. So I have my favorite guided imagery and I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to turn on any lights. So I'll say, hey, Alexa, play that, my favorite guided imagery. And then he hears it and it stops. So, kind of is figuring out what works for you. Is it when do you need to relax when you get into bed? Do you have trouble in the middle of the night? And kind of depending on what your sort of natural system is, you can kind of come up with some things that might be a good solution. Blue light, I like to talk a little about light. Blue light, which is LED lights, fluorescent lights, those are the things that suppress melatonin the most. So making sure those things are off in the evening will help you. And just, red light, orange light, why you see people with weird colored lights, those don't affect your sleep system at all. So sometimes people will switch over to other colors or wear the blue light blocking glasses, which you can even get on Amazon if you have to be exposed to bright light in the evening. But then light, so light can really mess up your sleep, but in the morning, light can do a positive thing. So if we go out, white light is sun, stars. It also includes blue light, but includes natural forms of light. That actually can boost your alertness, help you feel more awake. So if you're somebody in the morning that kind of drags a little bit in the morning, sometimes just sitting by a big window, sitting outside, depending on where you live. There are really, even if you search like, Go Light Blue on Amazon, they're small, they're the size of a cell phone now. You can get a light box. I'm sure you guys have heard of people using those. They're a lot simpler to use nowadays. If you do end up going that direction, my quick skinny on that is you don't stare right into it. So it's kind of like arm's length away, sit it on a table, maybe while you read the newspaper or eat breakfast and it's indirect light. You could even watch TV and have it kind of shining from the side. Just 20 or 30 minutes, sometimes people find that helps them feel more awake. So if you can't get exposure to natural light outside, or maybe it's a cloudy day, a lot of people find something like that useful, even for like seasonal affective disorder. There's other things people make use of it for. Okay, just a couple more slides, and then I want to know what you want to hear about. So I like to include, there are free resources out there. So the VA has created some great apps, and because it's created through the VA, which is federally funded, they all have to be free. So there are things that it's nice to have these things we don't have to pay for. So there is anything with the word coach in it. So there's a CBTI coach, that's the sleep app, and that's free, and that kind of walks you through a lot of the things I talked about. There's also a mindfulness coach. I really like that one. If you're just looking for like some relaxation practice, some ways to kind of decrease your arousal, the mindfulness coach is really a wonderful one, because there's just lots of things within the app to try out. There are paid courses online, if that appeals to you. And then there's other apps like Calm, Headspace. They often either they're free or they have a free trial. So it's something you can try for 30 days if you're interested in that. And then there's lots of good books out there. If you feel like you are someone with insomnia, or you have trouble kind of shutting your brain off from the to-do list for tomorrow, Quiet Your Mind and Get to Sleep, by a couple colleagues of mine, as well as Say Goodnight to Insomnia. I will say both of these books are ones that people come back and tell me they like a lot. There's lots of books out there though, so a lot of them have pretty good advice, but those are a couple I know people have enjoyed. And then, Anton, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can see everybody's faces. And I'd love to just have a conversation, because sometimes what you're interested in isn't what I talked about. So I'd love to hear what you'd like to talk about.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Dr. Aaron. Great information. Got me some notes as well. 6 to 9 hours is normal sleep. Got to have a conversation with my wife about that, because I do around 6 to 9, and she does less than that, less than
Yeah.
5. And then napping 7 to 9 hours after waking up. So I know this is a question and answer period, and I'll get to a couple questions people put in the chat. But when you mentioned that, I had a question, because I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning when I have to come into the office.
Yeah.
So for me, like that 7 to 9 period is like 11 to 1 in the afternoon. And so if you get up like really early, does that have an impact on that nap time?
Yeah,
Or
I would probably try to bring it earlier if you can.
okay,
Really the 7 to 9 is to try to get you kind of in the middle of your day. So I think more crucial is you don't want it 5 hours before you're going to bed. Because if you can pull it back a little bit, you're going to get more benefit from it, and it won't screw up your nighttime sleep. So it's kind of keeping it away. A lot of people will say, hey, I'm watching TV and I'm nodding off, so I get into bed and then I'm totally awake. What happened? And sometimes just a few minutes of that nodding off will deplete your sort of drive for sleep and make it hard to fall asleep. So I think you want to just pay attention to trying to stay awake in the evening hours, and that really will help you fall asleep better.
perfect. Okay. All right. So get to some of the questions. Early on, there was a question from Ginger. She had a question about the amount of time she sleeps. So she said, so if I sleep 5 hours or less per night for the past 40 years, what can I expect as I age?
There are genetically short sleepers. So people that sleep 4 to 5 hours in a night. I will say that is a very small percent of the population, like 0.01. So I get some people. So if you're one of those people, they do exist. You'll probably stay more constant. You're not going to sleep less. You're probably going to stay at that amount. I will say I get a lot of people that come in that say, oh, I'm only sleeping 4 to 5 hours. But when we really put a device on them, or we really look at their sleep over time, they're sleeping more than that. The change is as we get older, because it's light sleep. And if someone was in the room and said your name, you'd respond to them. But you're still in a light stage of sleep. So sometimes people feel like they're only getting 4 hours, but when we measure it, they really are getting a little bit more. It's just their sleep is lighter. And so they feel like they're not sleeping, but they're still getting sleep. It's just, yeah, it's not that kind of really deep sleep.
Got you. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that person that's sleeping 5 hours over the last 40 years might
They
have
they
changed
may
that
well,
much.
I'm guessing if it's been that long, you're probably one of those short sleepers. But the good
Hmm.
thing is, like, I don't want it to go down to 3. I mean, we do need a certain amount for our brains to function.
Yeah.
And so, and I will say, I'm really happy because there used to be kind of a bravado thing about it. Like, I work all day, I only need 4 hours of sleep. Like, it was like this thing to brag about. And I am so happy to see that that is kind of going away because no, I want to brag about getting terrific sleep every night,
Yes.
not no sleep. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yes. Good point. Good point.
yeah,
And then someone else says, and this is related to the melatonin comment probably that you made, but if you
yeah.
get up when you can't sleep, doesn't that interfere with melatonin if you've taken it?
You know what? It's not working it if you're waking up, right? So no, it won't just shoot it out of your system. It'll still be there. What it will do, so we have if you get up and do something relaxing, we have a substance called adenosine in our brain. And so let's say we had a full night's sleep and I said, "Hey, you just slept 9 hours. I want you to get back in bed and sleep another 8 hours." You'd say, "That's crazy. I can't do that." So we have this substance that when we sleep, it depletes and then it builds up over time. So it's kind of like, think of it like hunger. When you eat a meal, you don't want to eat
Mm.
another meal right after. But as you get away from the in time from that meal, your hunger builds back up and then you're hungry enough to eat again. It's the same with this substance. And so what happens is if we're awake a little bit, it builds back up and it helps make us feel sleepy. That kind of your eyelids, you can't keep them open. That's that substance, that drive for sleep. And so, and melatonin too, it's like, it's one of those things that will help us fall asleep. But the problem is sometimes it doesn't keep us asleep. So, that's when getting out of the bed might help you. I will say adenosine is the chemical that if you drink coffee, caffeine, that's what it works on. So if you're a
Mm.
coffee lover, if you wake right when you wake up in the morning, don't drink the coffee right then because you won't get that sort of boost, that sort of energy. If you wait an hour and you've built up some of that substance and then you drink the coffee, you're going to get energy from it. So listen, some people drink coffee just because they love it, and I'm one of those. But if you drink it to try to wake up, give yourself some time for it to really be able to work.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And that was from I think her name was Karen. Yeah, Karen. All right. So there's another question here from a different Karen. Um, is tart cherry juice
Yes.
effective as a sleep agent?
Yes. So there is a study that showed that a shot of tart cherry juice increases your natural melatonin. And in fact, I can find it somewhere if somebody really wants to see it. And so I actually currently work on a project that works with cancer patients who are undergoing treatment and trying to find ways to sleep. And it is one of the things we recommend. Now they often say, "Where do I find it?" Sometimes it's like a healthy food store. Sometimes it's not in every store, but uh, there are natural food stores, Whole Foods, those kind of stores often do have where you can buy the tart cherry juice and you take a shot of it. And it does actually naturally boost your melatonin and can help you fall asleep. So if it's something you enjoy, or open to trying, it's well worth trying. Just I'd say do it in the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, good. And then Brenda asked about Fitbits. Does the Fitbit measure sleep well?
Yeah. So Fitbits, the Apple Watches, gosh, we have all these devices now. They're
Mhm.
getting better and better. They do measure pretty well how much you're asleep and how much you're awake. What I'll warn you that they're not really that accurate is when they come up and say, "Oh, you only got, you know, uh 20 minutes of deep sleep." You can only measure the stages of sleep you're in with an EMG. So if you've ever done an overnight sleep study and they put the wires on you, that's a brain wave. So they have to measure those with leads. And what these Fitbits and other trackers do is they use an algorithm. So when you plug into them, "Hey, I'm 72, I'm a female, I'm this tall, they can see how active you are. Then it uses a formula to say, this is how much deep sleep we think you just got. But it's an estimate. It's not a actual measuring, when they have the Oura rings now. But I will say those devices are getting better and better at telling you how disrupted your sleep is. So I think they're actually useful. I like using them to kind of see, hey, how's my sleep across a week? How many nights were good or bad? It will tell you how restless you were, how much you're moving during sleep. They're really good for fitness tracking. So I think there's a place for them. Just don't get upset if it says, hey, you're not getting enough deep sleep. The Oura Ring has showed to be a little bit better at estimating that, but they're still not as good as you might find from an overnight study. They tend to not be entirely accurate, but they're working on it. So, I think it'll evolve over time and get better and better.
Thank you so much. Because you answered a couple of questions with that one. I
Yeah,
know
I
Ginger had
noticed
a,
that.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, lack of deep sleep and an effect on the brain and memory, and then Aura Ring from Renee. And so Sharna, if I'm a nocturnal person, I've always been this way. Now that I'm retired, it's not as much of a problem, but life does happen more during daylight hours.
Yeah.
So is it okay to plan my sleep for 4+ hours at night and use a long nap as a second sleep time in the afternoon? Or does my
Oh,
6 to 9 hours have to be, so I guess, can she break up that
you know
that
what?
moment?
Gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Look at Europe. Look at some European countries, and they have that sort of, they sleep, they get up, do stuff. Now, it's not as common as it used to be, and then they sleep again. As long as over a 24-hour period, you're getting that 6 to 9 hours, if that works for your life, that there's no problem in terms of effect on your health. It's more just getting that good sleep. And if it's better for you to split it up, I think I'd rather you have two sections of solid sleep than a long night of awake, asleep, awake, asleep. So you got to find what
Mhm.
works for you. I think when we're working full time, you're kind of forced into a schedule. So you have to work around that. In fact, Antoine, I was telling him, I just went to a current research roundtable about sleep. And they were talking about how during COVID, and I think this is true if you're retired or not, that everything changed, right? Suddenly things weren't in person, we're home more, or they're happening online or different times. And what we found, and everybody's interested in it now because you have all these CEOs saying everybody should come back to the office, everybody should come back to groups, these things should all happen in person, or we should go back to the schedule we had before. And a lot of these researchers that were presenting said, hey, no, you know what? Let's take something good from that period. And one of the things we can take is if we're flexible and we allow people to do things online or at different times of day, that they actually get better sleep because they can adapt each day to their schedule. And they actually showed that people got better sleep because they had the ability to be more flexible. There wasn't this rigid schedule that they had to try to fit in the rest of their life around. And whether you're retired, a volunteer, working, I think that applies to all of us. And it was helpful for me to hear that, to say, hey, no, you know what? Some of these kind of different, crazy schedules we got into is actually making some parts of our wellness, we can prioritize them. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a good comment. Um, so Kathy has a question about CPAP machines.
Yes.
She said it helps her sleep better. Will she always have to use the device for the rest of her life? And also, a kind of a part B is, what happens if she doesn't use it or fall asleep without it?
Yeah. I think pat yourself on the back because CPAP is hard to adjust to, and a lot of people struggle with it. If you find it helps you sleep better, that is one of the points. I will say one of the main points is it really decreases your risk of stroke, of high blood pressure. It really helps, especially cardiovascularly, but it does help really prevent the, exacerbation of some other health conditions. It can help you sleep better because then you're also not waking up gasping for air. Will you always have to use it? Some people, now I've seen 100-pound woman who has really bad sleep apnea, and she will need to be on it her whole life, maybe because of just the structure, how she sleeps. If she sleeps on your back, it's worse. How she sleeps, how her jaw and neck are structured sometimes puts you at risk of sleep apnea. Now, there are other folks that maybe they put on a little weight, Maybe they haven't been able to exercise and they end up with sleep apnea and on CPAP. For some people, if they kind of get back in and they're able to prioritize their health and get to a healthier weight for them, maybe they're more active. Some people find that they can actually stop using it. The key to figure this out is, you did an overnight sleep study probably to get on the CPAP. And there's no reason why every couple years, maybe every year, if you feel like your health has changed, ask your doctor, hey, I'd like to do another overnight study. Now, we know they're not super fun, but they will answer that question for you, because maybe your health has changed and your breathing's better. So just go through the test again, and that will determine whether or not you need to keep using it. Now, if you don't use it, there's two issues. One, it only works if you use it, right? So it only prevents these things. Even if you can just get in 4 to 5 hours a night, that makes a difference. I will say snoring and apnea is at its worst usually the last third of the night, because that's when we get the most REM sleep, and your apnea is worse at that point. So I like sometimes people say, I take it off, I can't deal with it, I go to the bathroom, I don't put it back on. Just try to remind yourself, hey, you get the most benefit in that last third. But the other piece is insurance, and your doctor, now they have those chips in it. They can tell exactly how many hours you've used it. And if they detect, hey, you're only using it 10 hours a week, insurance may then say, hey, you have to turn it back in. We won't pay for it. And they're not cheap machines. So there's two things. You're not getting the benefit, but then you're also maybe at risk of losing it. So those are just things to keep in mind. But yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for that question, Kathy Harrison. She she mentioned that in so one question, and as people think more about it, yeah, or have other questions, please drop them in the chat. I had a question too around snoring. Is there something, and this is more of a personal question because I'm really mindful of it. Sometimes I wake up and my throat is hurting. I'm like, oh my God,
because
my
you've had your mouth open. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, my wife is probably like elbowed me in the side all night long. How is there anything that can be done for snoring, outside of like a machine or anything like that?
That if, depending on how extreme your problem is, certainly, just so you know, sleeping on your side is always better. You have most snoring on your back, because your tongue, and everything kind of goes back in your throat. And so then it blocks your airway a little bit and causes you to snore. So sleeping on your side is good. And I will say, there are some, certainly Breathe Right, if it's a breathing problem for you. Some people they call them dental devices. You can get them from a dentist. Some people even just use mouth guards, because sometimes even just having something that lines up, if you have a really extreme sleep apnea, it's probably not going to be enough. But if maybe you don't have as much apnea and little snoring, sometimes just something to kind of keep your jaw kind of aligned can help. And then, of course, we have all these new fancy beds now that will lift up the top of your bed. I'm not going to lie. I a couple years ago finally saved up and bought myself an adjustable bed, because I snore a little bit and I have some back problems, and I found it kind of helps me with both, to be able to be in different positions. Sometimes it's pillows, but to be able to kind of, make it easier on your body to sleep and be in a good position can help with that a little bit. So there's some things you can do. Sometimes it's congestion. So it's kind of figuring out for you what's going on. Is it apnea, or is it something else? But yeah, you can usually tell because you wake up with that dry mouth.
Yes, yeah. And I've taken that. I one time, it was so bad. Well, I thought it was bad, but I went in and they sent me home with the straps and everything to sleep and kind of see all of that. And they were like, yeah, you don't have a problem. So they were checking for apnea or anything like that. And they were like, no, you're good. You just snore too much. And so I did do the Breathe Right strips and stuff, and they would work for a little while, but then they would stop, or it would go back. And so but
well,
yeah, thank you.
And I've seen people that then they recommend like something for congestion that I've seen some people then take every day. And sometimes that's all they needed,
Yeah.
So you might notice it's seasonal, but sometimes there's little things that help.
Cool. And then and this will be our last, since we're right at 10:56 or so. Our last question here is from Sharna. Can weather or change of season impact sleep?
Absolutely. In fact, you and I were talking about this before. We're like,
Mhm.
what if you live in Phoenix and you don't have air conditioning? You know, if it's hot, and that's, I kind of showed you that core body temperature. And maybe not everybody has air conditioning. So whether it's fans, maybe you just use a sheet, lighter pajamas, like certainly if you're hot, it definitely, or really cold, but I think we have a lot more trouble, people describe with sort of being too hot. Um, anything that you can adjust that helps with that. I won't lie, I have a fan on my bedside table that sometimes when I feel hot, I just turn it my direction, but just having some tools like that can help. Um, I think change of season, I also think with change of seasons, that sometimes, some people, their mood changes throughout the year. So you might also remind yourself sometimes seasonal affective disorder. Some people get really depressed when it's always cloudy outside. And so it can affect your sleep. One, you're not getting bright light, you're not getting vitamin D, but maybe you're somebody who really needs that sunshine. And so whether it's a light box, whether it's talking to your doctor about other things you might try to sort of boost yourself up, certainly seasons, temperature, light, all those things as they change. Daylight savings time, I'm a proponent to get rid of that just because the adjustment every year, we see more car accidents, we see more cardiac events. It's hard for our bodies to adjust to it. And then even months after, when we really test our bodies, they still haven't adjusted. So I always, yeah, so that's my soapbox for the day.
You and my wife must have written some sort of legislation. She's
Yeah.
all about getting rid of daylight saving time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Aaron. Really appreciate the time that you gave
Absolutely.
and the information. I am going to, for everybody that's still here right now, I'm going to drop a link in the chat so that you can take a quiz for this related to this session. It's one of the things that we have to make sure that we put in here. Now I got to look for it. Of course, I thought I had it up, and where did it? Here we go. And so I'll drop it in the chat now. So it only takes a couple minutes to complete. But if you can take the quiz, that would be wonderful. Um, and hopefully sometime in the near future we'll have Dr. Aaron come back with us, and share some more information with us about the importance of sleep and healthy aging. But again, we just thank you for your time, Dr.
Absolutely.
Aaron. We really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, we still have the chat open. Otherwise, we're going to put this recording on the ARP California YouTube page. And I know someone asked about the slides and whether they can be shared. So we'll check with Dr. Aaron to see. And if we can, we'll share them with you. But thank you for joining us this morning, wherever you are in the country. And we hope that you learned something from this session that will help you in your sleep patterns and having a healthy sleep. What do you call it? Activity? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and thank you for all those. I love all the faces I see. There's just a handful of you, but I've been staring at you the whole time. Deborah, Angie, Judith, Rosalind, all you guys, thank you. Rowena, thank you guys. I see you, Jim. It's just Katie. There's just a small group of you, but I appreciate it. It's just nice to see your faces too. So
Yes. Yes. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Dr. Aaron, again.
yes, absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, you all have a great rest of your day.
It's not in the link.
I'm sorry?
The address is not in the link.
The
The
address?
Oh, the
You
survey
didn't
link.
put the chat and you didn't put the link in the chat box.
Yeah, it should be there. I put it in there.
Here, I just put it in again, just
Oh, here it is.
because there was a whole bunch of stuff in between.
Oh, right. After. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
look at everybody's helping you out.
Everybody's dropping.
That's awesome.
It's a family. It's a family.
It is.
All right, you. I'm gonna leave it open for just another minute or so you can get the link, and then we'll drop off. So if you want to just drop off, by all means, please do. But thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us. And thank you again, Dr. Aaron.
You bet. You bet. Have a good week, guys.
Bye-bye, everybody. All right, everybody.
Mhm.
Closing up the meeting. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye-bye.